The Hungarian Grand Prix is done and dusted, and to nobody's surprise, Max Verstappen took the win and flew away into the distance to win by 33 seconds. If you actually were surprised with this result, then you need to stop believing the F1 pundits who blow up different scenarios where others can win and the RB19 can't compete for whatever reason. They only do it for the show, so that you don't get bored and watch something else. Despite Lewis Hamilton taking pole position and the entire British F1 media blowing up every possible scenario where Lewis or the McLarens would keep Max behind, there was not a single chance for others on merit to beat Red Bull this weekend. What nobody on the broadcast wants to mention is that he took pole by 0.003 of a second and was the last car out, meaning he had the most grip, and other cars not hooking up a lap, including the Red Bulls, meant he took pole position. Credit to Lewis Hamilton for driving the wheels off that car, but in hindsight, the pole position does not reflect Mercedes getting any closer to Red Bull. If anything, that was the maximum that car could produce, and the others just didn't do a good enough job in quali. I'm surprised that people talk about Red Bull's 12th win in a row when in reality, if you remove Brazil and Austria from 2022, which were sprint weekends, where they did not nail the setups in a single practice session, then in theory they have won 22 races in a row with a normal weekend format dating back to Silverstone last year. That's across every type of track that exists in Formula 1. That car is set to win every race this season, and even Max hinted at it this weekend, saying he wants to see what the car can do in Brazil later this year, since the result last year was so bad. Red Bull's dominance should really be applauded, but instead the media paints them like villains. When Ferrari and Mercedes were dominant, they were celebrated like no others, but now they say one sentence congratulating Red Bull on making history, and then talk about Mercedes and McLaren, when in reality they should be talking about how poorly the other teams are developing these cars. The other teams are clearly not doing a good enough job. McLaren found half a second with one upgrade cycle, and went from back markers to podium runners. They are exempt from this opinion. Meanwhile, Ferrari and Mercedes, and especially Ferrari, had decent packages that they never finished upgrading, abandoning it mid-season to just coast into next year, hoping that next year's car is going to be the one to dethrone Red Bull. But what happens if people stop challenging Red Bull in 2023? They also start to focus on 2024, and with an already existing advantage, that just means it's highly unlikely for the others to catch within this set of regulations. You're gonna live through the same season again and again in 24 and 25, just like in the Vettel era. It makes me as a fan furious when Leclerc's engineer comes on the radio after the race and says, P7, good job. No, it wasn't a good job. You were supposed to be the ones contesting for second best at this track and maybe do some damage to Red Bull, but instead they dropped the ball completely. I'm done waiting for Ferrari to improve basically everything within this team structure, or Mercedes to drop their ego and just go with a winning concept like Hamilton wants them to do. I can't even complain about Aston Martin, they don't really belong in this race anyway. I'm just happy that they've made improvements, and McLaren, I'm happy to have them back. But as a fan, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy a team making history. In 20 to 30 years, people will look back on these years, just like we look back at the Senna Prost years now in the 80s, and just remember how dominant and powerful the RB19 really was, and maybe by then we would appreciate it like it deserves. Thank you for watching.